So welcome to our parent workshop this afternoon for phonics for FS2. So I'm Miss Hunter, and then we've also got Miss Ward as well that we'll be going through the presentation for you with this afternoon. I think you're going to have to change for me, aren't you, Miss Ward? I don't think. Yeah, thank you.
If it's going to change for me. Oh, there we go.
Lovely. So the purpose of our session today is to explain the scheme that we use here at WSO, which is a scheme called Read, Write, Inc. The reason that we use this scheme is because it's very prescriptive, it's very fast paced, and it also just includes lots of different strategies to help the children with recognizing those letter sounds, having the rhymes to support their letter formation, lots of demonstrating related to my turn and your turn, which I'll explain a little bit further on, where we would model the sounds and how to sound out for reading and writing to support the children moving forward with those literacy skills. We are also going to explain how the session looks in a phonics session that the children take part in on a daily basis, and how then you can also support the children at home with their phonics learning, and then just to explain how the teaching of phonics can support the children with both their reading and writing, and how that links into like their literacy as well. Okay, so within the phonics scheme, the sounds are split into two categories. We have something that's called a bouncy sound, and these are the bouncy sounds that are listed for you here. I will just go through them for you, which are a, I, o, b, w, t, y, p, d, g, h, j, and qu. And then our stretchy sounds would be f, n, m, l, sh, z, r, s, v, th, and ng. Now these are also being shared with you on Seesaw from your class teachers, so that you get a demonstration each week of the sounds that we are covering. So what the sound, how the sound is, so how we would make that, and then also how we would write it. So we also stress as the teachers in the classroom that it needs to be a pure sound. So for example, if we were to do our stretchy sound, we wouldn't be modeling it as a m, because then that puts an sound at the end. So that makes it more difficult for the children when they begin to sound out for reading and writing. So we really emphasize the importance of making each sound very crisp and clear.
It doesn't want to change. Hang on.
Technology.
There we go.
Okay, so in each of our sessions, the children are extremely active. They support us throughout the lesson. We use lots of, as explained before, what's called my turn and your turn, and we use our actions where we'll point to ourselves and then point back to the children. So this is where we would model when saying the sound, for example, ah, 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 and then we would point over to the children, and then they would do the same thing and repeat exactly what I would say. So if I said ah, the children would then repeat ah. So that would be my turn, your turn. The children would also use another strategy called talk to your partner. And again, we can use our hand signals and gestures to show the children how to do that. So they would use their hands and we would show this action. So where they would turn to the person that sat next to them or closest to them on their table. And again, it might be, for example, turn to your partner and can you tell them the new sound? And again, they would look at their partner and say, ah. So with that strategy of talk to your partner, we're promoting the use of eye contact and participation, again, not only with the class teacher, but also with their peers as well. Okay, so just to talk through what an average day-to-day phonics lesson looks like, just to give you an idea, and then Miss Ward and I will break it down into sections to give you a thorough detail of how that looks as well. So the lessons on average last for around 30 to 40 minutes, which just sound quite long, but within, as we break down the sections of the lesson, you will see the different interactive and engagements that the children will take part in throughout the session. And as mentioned, they are fast-paced and there's lots of repetition in there to reinforce prior learning and new learning. So each session for each letter sound follows exactly the same format and structure. So as we build on the letter sounds throughout the half term, the children become more and more familiar with how the structure is and the expectations of each lesson. We only use Read, Write, Inc resources within the lesson. That includes the flashcards of letter sounds and pictures, and then also we can also bring in some other strategies, for example, hand actions that might link to other ways of learning sounds, such as Jolly Phonics, to help some children that might need more of a physical element to help them develop their sound knowledge.
Okay. Thank you for leading us on the first bit, Miss Hunter. So as Miss Hunter has said, we're going to now break the lesson down into its parts and really explain to you the structure of the lesson. And the first part of the lesson is where we say the sound to the children, and we model this through the use of the pure sounds and the mouth formation. Both parts go well together, and they're integral to how we teach the sounds and how the children learn the sound. So the sound is introduced through the use of picture cards, and it's we use my turn, your turn. So at the beginning of the lesson, the teacher would say the sound k, and they model it, the children repeat it back to them, and then we move to the pictures, and we would say the pictures such as k, k, caterpillar, and then the children repeat that through the my turn, your turn. We work our way through the pictures. The purpose of the pictures is that it's an anchor for the sound. So when the children see those pictures, they are reminded of the sound that is linked with them. So they know that a caterpillar has a k, and the teachers in the class, they really pronounce those sounds. They exaggerate them as they say that word. So it's not just cake, but k, cake. So they really pronounce and exaggerate that initial sound at the beginning of the word to really model how to say that sound and really link it with the pictures that you can see here. The next part of the lesson, through my turn, your turn, is also read the sound. So we go from say the sound to read the sound. The structure of this part of the lesson is that the teacher introduces how to read the sound first by drawing a simple picture. So as we can see, we either have a t or a k, and as the teacher draws the sound on the board, they draw the t and then draw a simple tower, or they would draw a simple k and then draw a caterpillar on top of the k. And again, this just helps anchor the sound to the children's memories that a k and a caterpillar go together. It's the same sound, they share the same initial sound, as well as t and tower. We then trace the letter with our finger. So when we have on the picture of the caterpillar or the t, we would trace the letter with our finger going t, 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 tower, and the children then repeat that. Once we've practiced that a couple of times through my turn, your turn, we then go on to, the teacher then writes the sound next to the picture. And again, it's that picture association. We're always repeating and practicing, because that is what the program is based on, and that is how they have found the children learn their sounds best, through repetition and through practice. And as we write the sound, as you can see here with the t next to the picture, we would just write the sound itself, and again trace it over with our finger, and as we would only then say the sound t once we've finished. So you would trace over the sound and then just say t. As Ms. Hunter said, we will also be providing videos where you will see this lesson in action. So in the videos that we provided, I am teaching my class, the sound k, and all of these elements, this part of the lesson will be in those videos for you to revisit after this session. Part 3, we then put the new sound into the sounds they already know. So by the time the children come to the sound k, they will have learnt another 9 sounds. So k is the 10th sound in their, 12th sound, in their 11th sound in their pack. So we put them inside and we then do something called speedy sounds. So when we go through the sounds, you're reviewing all the sounds that they know all of the time, just to again reinforce that previous knowledge. And when they see the new sound, they're encouraged to really point it out. They point and go, found you. And it just, by having that element of the lesson, it encourages that active participation. You can see as the teacher, by standing at the front, who is listening, who is participating, who is engaged with the lesson, because everyone is pointing and everyone is saying, found you. They then repeat the sound to you and you hide it again in the pack, and you just continue at a pace to review the sounds they already know. And again, with that reviewing of the sounds, you can then pay attention to who is maybe struggling with the sound, who is not quite saying the sound correctly enough. Some of the children might pronounce the as a b, and so you can go back and just reinforce the correct way of saying the sounds that they already know. The fourth part of the lesson is where we write the letter. And this is where we then bring in a little mnemonic that we then use to help reinforce how we write the sound. Every letter has its own mnemonic. Some of you might have heard Maisie Mountain Mountain from our very first letter that we started, our first sound that we started to learn. The mnemonic for k is curl around the caterpillar. And that's why we then also have the picture that we draw, because it helps to reinforce the writing and the formation of that letter. With curl around the caterpillar, we know that we start at the top and we curl around until we reach the bottom. We write the sound 3 times over. The first time by saying the mnemonic, the second time by saying k, 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 and bouncing that sound, and the third time by writing it and just saying k, and then we write it again, k. And again, it just reinforces all of that practice, just helps reinforce that letter formation as part of the lesson. Part 5 is called speed write, and this is where we review 3 sounds previously taught. So you may review sounds from the very beginning to just ensure that the children are really secure in their knowledge of how to write those sounds, and you could go around and check the letter formation for the children as they're writing it on their whiteboard. Fred talk. So Fred is an integral part of our phonics lessons. He is a frog, and Fred can only talk in sounds. So when we come to Fred talk, he tends to say a word that uses the new sound of the day. So as you can see here, all of our sounds begin with all of the words begin with our new sound k, and we use my turn, your turn with this part of the lesson. Fred will say a word in the teacher's ear, and the teacher then says in Fred talk to the class, k, at, and Fred talks that back to you. They would then repeat the sounds, and you repeat the sounds a few times, slowly getting faster. So it would be k, at, k, at, k, at. And the faster you say the sounds, the more the children can hear the word that they're trying to blend together. You would then say, inevitably, some of the children would then say cat to you because that's what they can hear. You then reinforce that k, at blends to cat. The black buttons that you can see here, we refer to them as sound buttons. A single sound, such as k, has a black dot. And as we move further through the programme, there are sounds called special friends, where you have two letters together and they are shown by a dash. So we model how to use the sound buttons for the first two. We then have the sound buttons to the side for the last two words. And we then manipulate that and we move the sound button underneath as we Fred talk the last two words. Back to Santa.
Okay, thanks, Miss Ward. I just wanted to say as well, because I didn't say this at the beginning, if you do have any questions that you might want to ask, please feel free to put them in the chat function on the Zoom meeting today. And what Miss Ward and I will do is we will collate all of those at the end of the engagement session, and we will get some answers together for you and send that out as a frequently asked questions. So obviously you've heard quite a lot of information so far, so you might have some questions from that, and then some more questions might follow as we go into the second part of the phonics sessions that the children engage with. So this part of the session is called word time. And the main focus of word time is where the children will begin to apply the letter sounds that they have been learning, not only from that particular day, but from the previous sessions as well. And as we build up those letter sounds, we start to add more and more into these word time sessions. So there'll be lots of modelling using, again, my turn, your turn, providing those lots of opportunities for the children to demonstrate their learning, both individually and as a whole class, and also supporting each other on their tables as well. The children will use resources including magnetic boards and letters that will help them build up words, and then they will start to begin to write words using a whiteboard and a pen. And there's also lots of sounds using, as we mentioned before, the Read Write Inc cards around the room to support the children if they need to refer or reference them to help them when they're doing lots of these activities, including like the speed writing of sounds, or when they come to segment words when they begin to spell. Okay, so we start word time by quickly going back and reviewing the sounds that we have taught so far that would take part in the word time of that particular day. Now, the word time sessions are broken up into different letters that would take part in them, and as I mentioned, they would build on them each time. So we would start at word time 1.1, and then 1.2, 1.3, and so on. So usually every 4 to 5 days, we will start to add to their letters, their magnetic letters that they would have on their boards, and also the letters that we would use within the word time sessions. So we build on Fred Talk to blend the sounds and say the word with oral blending. So with this, for example, we would do b-e-d, bed. So we would start to do it a lot faster than saying, as Miss Ward explained, where you would say the sounds lots and lots of times and say it faster to then say the word at the end from what they've heard. We would start to do say them a lot quicker. So as explained, it would be b-e-d, bed. And then the children would repeat those sounds back and say the word. And we would do that with a couple of words. That now, as you can see, there are a selection of words and they are within this specific word time section. It doesn't mean that we would do all of them, because we would do that particular word time for, as I mentioned, 3 or 4, 5 days. So we would choose a selection of them. And then again, we would be able to ask children to gauge their understanding and where they are within that learning. Do we need to do more of them, or can we do less? So there's constant assessment and revision of where our classes are at during the sessions as well. Okay, so the next part is what's called assisted blending. So we would introduce something new, which is called Fred fingers. So that's where the children would count the sounds in the word and break it down. So for example, the word that we're going to look at, and we would explain this to the children, that it is a word and that a word is made up of sounds. So we would say that the word is bin, and we would ask the children to repeat the word, which is bin. Then what we would do is we would chop up the word, how many letters we're going to need to make up that word. So it's a lot of combination of both beginning to sound out and read, and also sound out and spell. So it's using that those skills kind of work together based on their phonic and sound knowledge. So with the word bin, we would say it nice and slowly, b-i-n, bin, and then we would get our thread fingers and we would count the sounds. Now it's showing here that you've got the 3 fingers in the middle. Some children will start with their thumb, whichever is easiest for them, as long as what we're visually looking for is that they're showing us the correct amount of sounds for the word. So we would go b-i-n, bin, and then what we would do is we would pinch the fingers and we would be starting to talk about what is the first sound or the initial sound, as mentioned before, the middle sound, and the final or last sound. So for bin, we've got b-i-n, bin. So we would say what is the first sound, and we would model by pulling that letter down, as you can see at the bottom. What is the middle sound? I. Would move that down, and then the n for the final sound. And as you can see here again, we've got our sound buttons just to demonstrate and show that there are the 3 sounds. So as we press those sound buttons, we would say each of those sounds individually. So where we would model b, I, n, and then sweep our finger across the word to read it as bin. So there's lots of stages within that where the children are talking about a word, breaking it down into sounds, and then seeing how it then visually looks on the page. The next part of building on from that is where we do assisted blending, and the children would be using their magnetic letters. So as mentioned, this is just an example here where they would have these magnetic letters on their screen, on their board. Sometimes we can start having the letters at the bottom of the screen and we would move them up as we build up the words, or vice versa, where we have the letters at the top and we move them down. The letters are there so that the children can find them amongst different sounds, and again that would give us we would then be able to see which sounds the children are finding a little bit tricky, and then we can support those children further and build that into our sessions. So again, this is a selection of words that we would use within that session, and there would be lots of modelling that would take place. So for example, if we used the word pin, again we would do lots of, the word is pin, my turn, your turn. Let's chop up the word pin using our thread fingers again. So I-n, pin. What's the first sound, the middle sound, the last sound? Whereas you do the initial one, we would model it on the board. We would move the letter down, put the sound buttons to read it. Then we would take our letters as the teacher back up, and then get the children to repeat the words that we've just done. Following on from that, we would give them maybe 2 or 3 other words to have a go at, to gauge their understanding with building those words up again with their magnetic letters. We would also encourage the children to point at the letters on their boards with their letters to promote reading, again using my turn, your turn. So they would, for example, on the screen we can see we've got a, d, and then again sweeping their finger across to help blend those letters together to read the word as mad. We then move on to something that is called a green word. So within Read Write Inc, they focus on 2 different things. We've got green words and red words, and I will explain red words in a few more slides. So during our time on green words, this is again where we are using the letter sounds to really embed and begin to read words. So you can see here that the word is written, and we've again got the sound buttons. Now the word is written as a whole word, as opposed to when we've looked at them before, we are building it up as individual letters. So here again, we would be encouraging the children to do my turn, your turn to start with as b, e, d, and sweeping across to say the word bed. As we build up our confidence with reading green words, the aim is that the children would start to do something called thread in their head. So they would start to say the sounds quietly in their head without saying them aloud. And then when they've blended it in their head, they would then just say the words. So this is to help improve their reading for fluency, so that as they build up their confidence with reading, they won't need to sound out every word aloud, or they will begin to recognize lots of common and familiar words where they will just read the word out loud without having to break it down into sounds. So this one, if they were to thread in their head, they would go bed, and you would just hear them say the word bed. Moving on from reading words using their letter sounds, we look at something called segmenting. So that is where we start to chop up a word into sounds. So this is where they will begin to spell. So they will use their whiteboard pen to do this. And again, we would use the strategy of using our thread fingers. So again, we would model that we are looking at the word. And for example, in this particular one, the word is mud, and the children would repeat that back. And again, we can use the other strategies of turn to your partner, tell your partner what the word is that we're going to write. Then we would begin to chop that up. So again, I would model it by saying it slowly. So d, mud, let's count them. So we'd go d, mud, and start to pinch those sounds again. So again, we would model what's the first sound you can hear. So we would write that. Then what's the middle sound? Again, we would write that one, and the final sound as d. And then we would go back and check, like, well, how many sounds did we count? We counted 3. Have we written 3? And this is also an opportunity for us to reinforce the handwriting using the rhymes that we build in when we first introduce the letters, just to make sure that that letter formation is correct as well, just to help with their fine motor skills when writing. Okay, so I've explained a little bit about green words, but just to go into a bit more detail, a green word within Read Write Inc is words that you can sound out using the sounds that we have taught. And that's where they would use their Fred talk to sound them out and blend them together. This will help when they are also writing words by using those phonic sounds. The other words that they would learn within the phonic sessions are called red words. Now, within a red word, there might sometimes be combinations of letters that they have learnt through the sounds, such as here we can see the red word is the, and we will teach a sound, a special friend sound, which will be 2 letters, the T and the H, or the T and H, which makes one sound. However, you wouldn't be able to sound that out, because if you did it, it wouldn't make sense to the children, because if we did, it would be the, and that wouldn't make sense when reading. So some words we just have to learn what they look like to read, and then also begin to start to memorize them to write them. So these are slightly trickier words, but within this specific scheme, they call them a red word. And again, these are also shared with you on that weekly basis. When you get the letter sounds, the red words are also shared on there, and how we would pronounce them and how we can support with the writing of them as well.
Okay, so part of the Read Write Inc programme is not only participation and pace, but praise, and praising everything the children do, from being active and participating to correct letter formation, correct sounds and saying them correctly. And there are lots and lots of different praises that the programme have created and that other teachers have created themselves. And so we would choose different ways of celebrating the children's learning and participation throughout the lesson. There are some things called the marshmallow clap, which is where we pretend that we've got a marshmallow and we clap as if we've got a marshmallow between our hands, and then sometimes we might eat the marshmallow as an extra added sort of celebration. There's a whoosh, and you send a whoosh to somebody, or you send a whoosh to the whole class. My personal favourites, I've got a lorry driver. So we pull on the lorry driver, go woo woo. My children like the double lorry driver, so we have both hands and we go woo woo. We can do fireworks. There's a pixie clap where we have our little fingers and we clap like a pixie would, because a pixie is small. I don't know the ketchup clap. Do you know the ketchup clap, Miss Hunter?
Yeah, it's almost like they're holding the bottle and they sort of like pat the end of it.
Pat the end of the glass bottle. So you've got fantastic, as if you're fanning yourself. So there are lots of different fun ways of celebrating the children's achievements and learning steps and goals as they go through the lesson, and it adds a little bit of fun. I
was just going to add as well, like this is where as well the children can support each other, so you can turn to your partner and tell them something amazing, and it can just be something like, wow, you're so good at your sounds today, and oh, I love how you've written the letter on your board, and different things like that as well, just to help that sort of peer praising as well.
Yeah, and I like to use them throughout the day as well. So it's not exclusive to Read Write Inc that we would use these. They're such a lovely way of praising different things that the children choose throughout the day. And the more you use them, the more familiar the children are with using them themselves, and they then might incorporate that in how they speak to their friends and seeing their friends achieve something that they know they might have been finding difficult. So feel free to ask your children at home what they've been learning as part of their praises in Read Write Inc, and if they can teach you any that they know. So the importance of sharing books at home. I know that we know this from when we were children and reading, but it really does reinforce the importance of learning the sounds and learning how to read. 5 to 10 minutes daily is better than the sort of half an hour once a week. And the reading, as it says here, can happen anywhere and everywhere. You could be in the car, and whilst you're waiting at the lights outside a shop, say, what sounds can you see on the shop sign? What sounds or words can you see on the labels in the shops when you go to the supermarket, or in recipes when you're cooking, if you might be cooking together over the weekend? Anything they might see at home, any magazines, can they recognise any sounds or words? Can they spot their red word for this week? Can they Fred talk a CBC word that you can see within the book that you're reading or around you? So it doesn't have to be sit down on the sofa with a book if that's not what you're able to achieve that day, but just something around you within your home when you're out for a walk or going to the mall or the supermarket. It could be anywhere where you're encouraging that reading and that identifying of sounds and things around them, because that's massive, and it really applies their learning to their real life world and what they see around them, and it gives that learning a purpose, and they really start to get excited by, before I didn't know what that was, and now I can read it. I can help mum pick out the milk, for example, or the cat food. It makes it fun, and it can make it a supermarket shop a bit more exciting. Okay, so we do have some do's and don'ts for sort of home learning. Just to, again, you've joined this session to understand how we teach phonics, and there are some things that we don't do within our lesson that we would ask that you continue to follow whilst you're at home and whilst you're supporting your child's learning at home. Like we said, we praise constantly, so it doesn't have to be a praise at the end of a massive thing. It can be a praise for the smallest of things, for writing a letter with the correct formation, or saying the sounds, or giving something a go, even if they don't do a Fred talk quite as accurately as we would like them to. Even just that, giving something a go, praise. Keep the home learning and the sharing book sessions short but frequent and fun. Read to your child often, even if it's a book they can't read. You could talk about the pictures, and hearing you read with all the different character voices, again, will just help to instill that love of learning and that love of reading with them at home. Practice formation and recognising sounds in the environment. I know that we've been sharing on Seesaw the different sound activities through the children's Seesaw, and they look at the formation. You can ask them what the mnemonic, what the phrases that they need to say as they're writing their letter, and it really then helps them to remember to start at the top, and particularly with letters such as and b, where they have to go down the line and then come back up before doing the next part of the letter formation. What we don't encourage at the moment is using letter names, because they can get confused. So rather than saying A, we say A. Instead of B, it's B. So I know that there are some children who know how to write their name because they know that it's an A and then a Y, for example. We're now starting to really focus on just using the letter sounds rather than letter names. And we don't at the moment encourage the use of capital letters, simply because, again, the formation is different, and until the children are really secure and really confident with the formation of all of those single sounds within the alphabet. We just stick to the lowercase formations and the letter sounds rather than letter names and the capital letter formation. Is there anything else that you would add to that, Ms. Hunter?
No, I think obviously just in terms of the use of capital letters, obviously we are aware that everybody's name starts with a capital letter, and obviously we would still reinforce that when they're writing their name, they would use their capital letter for their name because it's an important thing. But obviously in terms of writing words, so if you are modelling a word to support your child at home, for example, if you want to show them how to write the word cat, then you would use all lowercase letters within that. And I think obviously, like, all the children take home their library books, so that's one of those books that you can share with your child, and you can share it as many times as you want, and you don't have to always do the whole book in one go. It can be you just talk about the front cover. It could be that you just pick a part from the middle of the story and say, oh, can you remember what happened before this or what happened after this? It could be that you just, oh, let's just look for the letter sounds you've been learning this week. So it doesn't have to be just reading it. There can be lots of different aspects that you can pull out of just using one book. And then obviously they can change their library books every week at school as well. And then obviously any library or any books that you have at home as well will obviously support that as well.
Yeah, I think that's something really important. Thank you for adding that, Ms. Hunter.
No.
So there, at the end of this PowerPoint, there is a link that you can access for some extra support that the Read Write Inc Foundation and Ruth Miskin, who is the lady who created this programme, they have provided some short videos, again, for parent support at home. So you can access these in addition to what the school and we will provide you in the context of how we teach it here at WSO. The videos that myself and Ms. Hunter will provide, they are just being edited for the clips, and once we have the links for everything, they will be shared to you. So they won't be accessible at the end of this very session, but you will be shared those links when they are ready. And the purpose of those videos is if you want to go back and check a particular part of the lesson, such as how to do the write a sound part, there will be a video that's labelled write the sound, and we've broken them down into those chunks. So rather than having to watch a whole lesson to find the one bit that you want, you can just go to a specific part of the lesson that you just want to recap with your child at home.